the Rec Innovation Lab students and some of the startups that they are starting here, here at the center. And I was just telling our guest today, Al Bashara, about the fact that right now we're, yeah, here he is. Right now we're in a temporary space on campus, but very soon we'll be moving into our more permanent home, which is on the ground floor, the whole ground floor of the C building. In about 4 weeks, we should be all the way moved over, and we're very excited about that. We hope that all of you will be able to join us for that grand opening, and more to follow on that. Now I'll stop talking and I'll hand it over to our amazing guest speaker, guest presenter. This is one of my favorite workshops that we do. I absolutely love this, especially as the students are preparing to pitch, and they'll be pitching to investors here in a few short weeks. So this is really helpful, good timing. So
awesome.
Thank you for coming, Al.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Yep.
Hey, everybody, I'm going to get my screen shared here, and then we can get her going. Okay, are we good on you guys see it? Perfect. Good. Awesome. So thank you again. Thanks for having me. I really enjoyed doing this a year or so ago, and excited to be able to do it again. So first, quick, super fast agenda, just kind of let you know what's coming and what to expect. I'll do a little bit about me so you kind of know who I am and who you're talking to or listening to. And then some of the other topics are going to be about, are you actually ready to raise capital? And then what you need to do to prepare and actually execute a capital raise plan. And then we'll go into Q&A, which I hope is most of the time. So, get those questions ready. Feel free to ask anything. Ask along the way in between this too. I don't mind interactive. You don't have to wait for me to finish before you can ask your questions. So if you have something in line, feel free to ask it. Otherwise, queue them up for the end and we'll dive in there. Okay, so real quick, a little bit about me. I grew up in Detroit. I was a double E by degree and worked in the auto industry, as a lot of people do in the Detroit area. And after a couple of years of this, it was time for me to get a change in both the industry that I was in as well as the geography. And so I moved to San Diego. This was back in 1998. And I joined a company as the second employee. We grew it to 50 or so people. We sold it. And that was kind of the beginning of my entrepreneurial journey over the past 20 years or so. The first company I started in the early 2000s, I did all the things wrong that you could probably do, made a lot of mistakes along the way. I was a solo founder, built a really fun, cool company that had customers and everything, but a solo founder was not surrounding myself with the right people, and just because of that, didn't know what I was doing wrong. And so then I went through programs like Techstars and Founder Institute, very familiar, similar to the programs you guys are going through here. And I learned why I made those mistakes. And I was mentored very heavily by just amazing people that gave their time and helped me become not just a better entrepreneur, but also a better person in many ways. And so, fast forwarding quite a bit of time, did much better the next time around, sold my company to Seismic Software here in San Diego, started Interlock Capital. So we're now investing in startups and companies and still making mistakes, right? But learning along the way, and hopefully that learning cycle is much quicker than it was the first time around. So first question I have for you, how many of you, are we going to be able to hear people on the audio if I ask a question? All right, so first question is, how many of you think you're ready to raise capital today? Anybody in the room here? Anybody online? Give me like a virtual shout out. Okay, well, that's probably good news, because I'm going to bet that you're probably not ready. And it's not because of you. It's not because of what you're doing. I also thought I was ready 3 separate times to raise capital. And I learned, not the hard way, but by doing some things, you can learn whether you're ready or not. And we'll talk through some of that today. But I was not ready either. And it took us three times to get it right. Now, you hear a lot about startups failing to raise capital or struggling. You hear oh, it's so hard, they don't understand, right? There's a bunch of reasons that you can go through here, right? Their location, there's no capital here, which today has changed dramatically over the past couple of years, right? There's a good thing of COVID is that capital is more distributed now. But they blame it on investors that don't get it, whatever. They come up with all kinds of reasons. And they finally, after so many no's, when they're out there trying to raise capital, they realize that they might not be ready. And look, we're founders, we're entrepreneurs, we're stubborn. It's okay, right? Like, but sometimes that passion that really, really drives us also blinds us to some degree. So it's really important to be self-aware of whether or not you're actually ready to raise capital. We'll talk through some of that. So there are a bunch of things you need. The first one is that's really, really important is your network. And I think we all understand what a network is. So the question is, do you have a network of angels and VCs that you're already talking to? If you do not, then you're not ready, right? You don't want to start cold if you need to raise capital now. If you do have a network of VCs and angels that you're talking to, that's great. You still may not be ready, but you're miles ahead of other people who haven't even started this process yet. So understand that it's talking and building relationships with investors. It's a dating process, right? They're investing in you, and this is an important piece. Your company, you're doing some things wrong today. Your financial model is wrong. There's a bunch of things with your company that are wrong today. What they're investing in at an early stage is whether or not you are the founding team or the founders that are going to be able to figure out this problem and solve it and iterate and move forward. And so, likening this to a marriage of some kind, right? You don't ask to get married on the first date. You get to know each other over time. And like that, you don't ask for money when you've just met an investor. So what you do is you ask for advice, you get to know them, you provide regular updates, whether it's monthly or weekly on what's going on, and you show that you know how to execute, and you build confidence over time, all right? Just like any other relationship that you would build. And when you're ready to raise capital, they're going to be ready too, because they've been following along. They've seen you do good things. They've seen you execute. And it won't be a cold start where it's like, hey, first time we've met, I'm deep in the middle of a fundraise. It's just not the time where an investor is going to be like, yeah, I'm ready to jump in. I don't know you at all, but let's give you some money. It's just super rare, unless you're somebody who has grown $1 billion company in the past, right? Then you can get away with that. Most of us cannot. So when you're building that relationship, there's 3 things you want to do. You want to share what you're going to do in the future, do that thing, tell them about it, and then repeat, right? And so it kind of looks like this, right? You're going to build an email list. You can use MailChimp, PaperStreet. There's a bunch of different tools out there to help you communicate on a regular basis. Ask every person you speak with. If you can add them to that list, right? The people that you want on that list to be updated. And something that I try to do at every meeting, which I think adds a lot of value, is ask them how you can help them. You'd be surprised, right? You may think to yourself, what am I going to do with this person who's the CEO of a big company or an investor at some big firm? You'd be amazed when you dive in and you ask what they're actually into, how you might be able to help, and ask them who else you should meet, right? Because then they'll be thinking about different folks that they know. You'll be in the back of their mind. So you update this list monthly when you're not raising, and weekly when you are raising. And as we kind of talked about, right, in each update, you're going to tell them what you accomplished last month. You're going to tell them what you're going to accomplish in the next month. Then you're going to do that thing, whatever it is, and then you repeat that cycle. So now, just by running your business, you were building a relationship, you were building confidence. These folks who are on your list are like, wow, he or she said they were going to do this. A few weeks later, they knocked it out of the park, and that's great. And look, be honest in these, right? Everybody knows that no startup is perfect. You're gonna hit bumps in the road, right? Don't make it all rosy perfect, because we all know that's a lie, right? It's not. Doing what you guys are doing is super hard. So don't be afraid to say, hey, we did these 2 things, but this third one, we kind of fell on our face a little bit. Here's what happened. Here's what we learned. Here's what we're going to do about it, right? Man, we appreciate that. I appreciate that a ton, because it shows me that you're honest, you're humble. And when we're down the road and you're growing a bigger company, I know I can trust you, right? Because you're going to tell me the bad things as well as the good. And the best part about telling people the bad things is they can help you, right? You're opening up the door. It's like, hey, we have a challenge here. Next thing you know, you might have a couple of investors or whoever's on your list saying, ooh, I know the perfect person that can help you out, right? That's an amazing thing to be able to do. Another really important thing to determine if you're ready is, do you have the dedication to do this? And when it comes to dedication, when you're talking about the actual act of performing a fundraise, it's a full-time job. You need to dedicate all of your time to it. You need to dedicate more time than you have to it, right? You got to let go. You got to let your team do their thing, and you got to focus on this. This could be 2 to 3 months, right? And that's just kind of the execution part. There's still preparation that happens before this. You don't need to be full-time on all that preparation, but when you're in it and you're making it happen, you really, for a couple of months, want to be able to be committed and walk away from the business and trust that it's going to run itself. And I say this because what kind of advice do you think I got when I went to raise my first round of funding? Just do this, right? Give it all your time. And what did I do? I didn't follow that advice. So I spent almost a couple of months trying to raise while I was running my business. And I got 40% done. My lead investor is like, hey, what are you doing? Why is this taking so long? And I told him, I'm like, I know exactly what the problem is. Give me a little time. I committed to it and I was done in 2 weeks. Now that might be an extreme case, but it's true. It's 100% true. Focus on this. You're going to get it done a lot faster. I'd say the old adage of you can do a bunch of things half good, or you can do one thing really, really good. And this is important for this because if you're not working on the business, your business is struggling. So the faster you get through this, the better you're going to be. So focus on it. Momentum. This is another big piece to raising capital and being ready to raise capital. And this definition here is the quality of or the quantity of motion of a moving body measured as the product of its mass and velocity. And so if I translate mass and velocity to the startup world, I get kind of like substance and is it moving, right? So what are some examples of substance? Traction, early adoption with customers, partnerships that are valuable not just to you, but the other party. A functional product with paying customers, a team that's just incredibly good and amazing, great technology that works, a compelling solution to a really, really hard problem. And then what are some examples of it moving, of those things moving, right? Consistent, rapid growth in meaningful metrics and multiple metrics, trusted people, media, organizations saying great things about you, right? This is important as well. That could be investors, it could be media, it could be anybody. Consistently hitting those difficult to achieve milestones, graduation or attendance to accelerators and incubator programs, a great go-to-market strategy that you've actually tested and works, and a repeatable formula for success. Now, we'll talk a little bit about examples of what that means, but do you need to do all of these things? No. But these are boxes that you can check. And these aren't all the boxes, right? There are plenty more that investors are going to look at and have in their minds of every box I can check. That's one thing that I've de-risked, right? Because a lot of times investors are trying to figure out ways not to invest in you, right? So you want to give them all the reasons why they should and scratch off the ones that are going to be negative. And it takes a lot more than just kind of being ready as a business to raise capital. There's the whole planning and execution part of it, right? So you want to be hyper organized. You want to run a process. Just like sales in a company, you have a process, right? You have touch points, you have a story, you have materials, you have all these things. The difference here is you're doing it with a bunch of people at the same time and they all need to come in at the same time, right? So with sales, you can go sell something and then go sell to the next person later. This, you're herding some cats and you got to get them all to line up around the same time. So it's really important that you run that process. You want to get some momentum. You want to line up your tools. You want to build your story, which we'll get into in a bit. You want to identify prospects and not just all of them. You want to identify the right prospects for you and your business because it's different than another business. You want to work your network, get warm introductions as often as you can, get the meeting, build excitement, show progress and execution, keep them on the hook, right? Because you want to keep them interested along the way and then close them. And more importantly, this all sounds like crazy. Have fun. be yourself, like enjoy the process, because it can be really fun, especially if you've gone through all the things and you are ready as a business to raise capital. You have a great story to tell. It's amazing to have great conversations with really smart people. So be genuine, have fun, and enjoy the process. Obviously, these sections here are the ones that you're going to repeat potentially 100 or more times, right? With different investors, because you will get some no's. It's going to happen, right? Just be ready for it and work through it. Tool shed. So there's a lot of tools you can use to help with the process and the execution. Lightweight CRM. I've used Streak in the past. It's built right into Gmail, so you never have to leave your inbox. Pretty clean. It's lightweight, right? It doesn't do everything that a bigger CRM would. Some people use HubSpot or many others out there. You can also use spreadsheets or Airtable or whatever. Just make sure you're very diligent about whatever tool you're using, because if you're talking to hundreds of people, you're not going to remember, what did we say? What was my follow-up supposed to be? When was I supposed to follow up? What are next steps? You're not going to keep that all in your head. So you have to be very diligent in whatever tool that it is, so that when 2 weeks come by and the investor said, hey, let me know in 2 weeks how your raise is going, 2-week mark hits, boom, you send them an email and they're like, wow, this person's on it, right? That's valuable. Dropbox, DocSend for your data room, right? This is where your deck's going to live, where your financial model, your go-to-market, whatever other documents that you're going to share with your investors. Of course, social, all that stuff is great, especially now. It's a good way to break into getting to be a part of a conversation with somebody that you want to be in a conversation with in person. Email, use it really, really well. It's very important to do it right. PowerPoint, Google Slides, friends, fellow founders, your network, all of this stuff is just a big part of your toolbox that you got to get working together in a clean manner. Another thing that's really important that I struggled with really early on, and this book kind of changed my positioning of myself, where I felt I sat at the table between me and, say, an investor. It's, I will say, I need a caveat, this book is over the top. The things that the author says that he does and all that is a little crazy. It's a little too much, I think. But the point he's making is what is important. And that is, you are the prize. You've got the amazing company that investors want to be involved in. So act that way. Doesn't mean be cocky and be a jerk, right? It means be confident in yourself and what you're doing. Money is kind of a commodity. That doesn't mean it's easy to get. It means you can get it from any investor. So you want to get capital that comes from somebody who's going to give you more than just that capital, right? They're going to add value in other ways. Have that mindset. Know that you can get the capital from somewhere else. Be bold, take charge, have confidence, and sell your story, right? The book is Pitch Anything by Oren Clough. I got to know him when I was going through Founders Institute long time ago. And again, it changed how I thought about who was the most important person in the room. And that doesn't mean that you're the most important person, or I am, but what it means is you're much more equal than what I thought was going to be the case going in. And it very much sort of framed how I did things. Okay, this one, I'm going to ask the people in the room first for an answer to this, and then we can ask the online folks. The purpose of the deck is to what? I want to hear what you guys think. The deck that you're going to send out to your investors, what's it for? Okay.
Just know about what you can offer and they can offer you.
Okay. Any others?
I mean, I think it's to sum up like your idea, the problem, financials, like in a concise way that's captivating. So you elaborate during the presentation.
Okay.
The story about how your solution is going to solve some problem.
Okay. Everybody online, if you could unmute real quick and just start blurting them out.
Yeah, just to communicate that you got your crowd together and that you know what you're doing, you're sophisticated enough, and then you're worthy of a conversation.
The introduction to your corporation and your executive management team.
Okay, keep going.
Is it what it answers who, why, what?
Okay.
To generate interest, excitement in your company.
Okay.
To
Anybody
get
else?
them to get them to have FOMO that if they don't invest in your unicorn company, they're gonna miss out.
Okay. At certain times, that is true. Okay.
We helped Blink. We helped Blink by
The
doing
answer, and
Blink.
I heard a couple that were actually pretty close. You talked about kind of getting to know so that you could get to the meeting and elaborate. The purpose of the deck is to get the meeting, period, full stop, nothing else. That is all that matters. No investor is going to look at your deck and throw money at you. Okay. Like we've talked about for the past few minutes, they're going to want to get to know you. They're going to want to ask questions, right? That deck is not going to solve that problem at all. What it does solve is get you in front of that person, whether it's virtually or in person. So stop trying to take your entire brain and dumping it into a deck. Nobody wants to read that, right? It will put investors to sleep. And this is a real problem. Investors see so many of these decks that if you don't grab their attention really quickly, and it's something that's interesting and it's something they can actually consume in a short period of time, they're going to get distracted by something else or just flat out not continue. So stand out, tell your story, be different, right? But tell your story in your way and be brief about it, right? Show me, don't tell me, which we're going to dig into a bit here. Super important in how you tell your story. Hit them in the heart, not the head. The head's the one that's thinking why they don't want to do something, why they don't want to invest, what check boxes you're not checking, how they're analyzing your financials. If you hit them here, it's going to soften them up a little bit, right? You have an emotional story to tell. Now that could be your personal experience with why you're doing what you're doing. It could be 100 different things. But if there's some kind of emotional tie to the story, it's going to be a better story, right? You don't watch movies to get a list of bullet points, right? You watch movies to be engaged and be excited about a story of some kind. Do the same thing here. Lead with your strengths. Every company has good things and bad things. Again, you've got to hook them. You got to hang on to them. So lead with the things that are most interesting. It's going to be different for every one of you. And keep them on the edge of their seat, right? Once you grab them with the good stuff, you got to keep them on the hook, right? Keep reeling them in a little bit, let them out, reel them in a little bit. And you got to do that for every single slide so they get through the whole thing, okay? Super hard to do, but really, really important. Show me, don't tell me. So David Cohen, who was the founder and CEO for many years of Techstars, as I was going through the program, really pushed this concept. And it changed how I present things. So here's an actual example of, rather than me trying to explain it. So here's an example of somebody telling you something. We help marketers improve their ability to reach potential customers and close more deals. Sounds cool, right? You close more deals, you can get more customers. That's awesome. However, it can be a lot better. We onboarded 50 marketers in 30 days. They're paying us $30 a month, and they've increased their close rates by 27%. This is an example of showing me something. This is real. The other thing, you could just be an idea. When you're telling me something, I don't believe you. You have to go into the mindset of the person you're talking to isn't going to believe you. And the way you make them believe you is you show them something that's real. Right? This is what we've done. Here's what we're doing. And if you want to put a kicker in it, we spent $1,000 on ads to get those users, and it's generating 1.5 times that every month. Okay, now what you've done is you've added that formula for success that I hinted at earlier. Not only do you have customers, they're paying you, they're getting real value, but you know how to grow that. That's your formula for success. And it's like 35 words is all it took to check a bunch of boxes, right? You need to try and do this everywhere in your story, everywhere in your deck. Make it real. So I'm not wondering how far are these? Is this an idea? What stage are they in? Like just nail it out of the gate. It's really important. And it's also super hard to do. I don't know if I put that in here anywhere, but my first fundraising deck went through 28 iterations in like a 2-month period. And the first one looked nothing like the last one. Okay, that's okay, because this is hard to do. It's really hard to do well, and you're going to learn and iterate along the way. Anybody here heard of Guy Kawasaki or his 10-20-30 rule of PowerPoint?
One of those who are older.
This is a really old thing that he put together a long, long time ago. 10 slides, 20 minutes, 30-point font. I'm going to tell you, if you use this slide, or if you use this template as your deck, nobody will want to read it. Okay, because all it's doing is saying, okay, slide 1 problem, slide 2 solution, slide 3 team, slide 4 market, slide 5, whatever. Oh my gosh, do you know how many of those decks are out there? It's not telling me a story. It's a bunch of bullets. It's not you. It's not your story, and it's not compelling, right? It's the movie on Netflix that I would stop watching, right? It's not that good. That said, the 10 things are really important to cover, and you need to weave them into your story wherever they fit as you're telling your story. And 100% use 30-point font. Okay, just don't use that as a base template. That is the only thing that I beg of you, because nobody wants to see those, unfortunately. The 30-point font helps you tell your story in a more concise way. Fewer words, more pictures, imagery. Get the meeting, tease them, right? Tease them like, ooh, I want to learn more about that. Next slide. Oh, that's cool. I want to learn about that too. Next slide, right? And then you get that meeting because they're very curious. I think I may have already said this stuff. Tell your story, weave in the 10 points. Ah, there it is. 28 iterations in 2 months. Yeah, you're going to be bad at this, and that's okay. We all are. It's hard to do well. Yeah, so some kind of simple stuff. I'm not going to read through all these, but like pre-money, post-money valuation, valuation caps, safes and equity, preferred stock, cap tables, participation rights, pro rata rights. This is the language of venture capital, right? And the reason I'm saying this is you have to know your audience, right? You have to know who you're talking to. You have to speak their language. This applies in any environment where you're trying to convince somebody to do something or sell to them. And so this is a good book. It's been on, I don't know how many iterations it's on now, but I just had tons and tons of like little thumbnails in it essentially, and used it as a reference guide. You know, I'd skim through it, I'd learn some topics, and I'd earmark them. Okay, and so when you get the meeting, right, you've gone through all this stuff, you've done everything, you've got your story right, you've excited somebody, and now you have a meeting. 90% of the time, it's going to be a conversation, right? If you got the meeting, odds are they've looked through the deck and they got excited about something and they have questions. So that's probably where you're going to start. Hey, tell me about this, or I was interested in this, or I didn't understand this. That's what the conversation is going to be. I think the first time I raised capital, I had one meeting out of all the meetings that I took where I was standing in front of a stage with the deck, not a stage, but standing in a room with, you know, more than 3 people with a deck one time. The rest of it was either phone calls, Zooms, or in person, just conversations. And the good thing is, you know your story at this point, right? Hopefully you've removed 75% of the bad stuff that you had in it. But you've kept it up here, which is where it matters and where it should live, right? So that when those questions come up, you have the perfect answer. And you've practiced in front of a mirror, in front of your friends, your family, your dog. I swear I would practice in front of my dog because she would look at me, she'd cock her head funny, she'd get distracted by something, she'd go run away in the middle of this amazing thing I was telling her. She'd scratch herself, whatever. Like, the beauty is it's totally distracting, but you have to plug through it. And that gets you to the point where you don't worry about the external environment. You're just telling your amazing story, whatever that is. And practice a lot because it's important. You don't want to be struggling to remember this amazing test that you did that proves that you have this formula for success. You want to just, boom, this is it. This is what we did. Here's why it worked. Here's what we can do in the future, et cetera, right? You want to have those stories really, really dialed in. So you can answer every question and then crush the meeting. So this I just saw the other day, and it's pretty awesome. I'm going to recommend you all go find it on Twitter. There's a link in here that we'll share later. But one of our portfolio founders of a company called Forecaster, they built a SaaS product that allows you to build really, really detailed financial models without ever touching a spreadsheet, which is amazing, both for investors as well as the companies. And he went through and he did a Twitter thread on a 6-month kind of plan, and he likened it to playing chess, and it very much is. These are kind of the high level bits. These are each of the tweets in the thread essentially, but it covers things from documenting your investors, finding a map to all of the paths to getting in touch with them, sharpening your axe in your story, right? Start meeting people. Then, you're still 5 months out at that point, right? You're building that trust in that network and getting to know folks. 2 to 4 months out, you're starting to engage with them. A couple of touch points, right? Letting them know what's going on. 1 month out, then you're kind of setting up the pins, the bowling pins, right? And then when you're ready to go, ready to blitz, you hit everybody at the same time and you just start knocking down those pins. And he talks about, starting with the ones that are most likely to say yes. So you get that early momentum and all that kind of stuff. So check out the thread, the link's there. And it's it's super high level. It's a Twitter thread, right? You're not going to dive deep into this thing, but it really sets the tone for what it takes and how much time it takes to do a lot of this stuff. So let's kind of repeat some of what we talked about for clarity, and then we can sort of get to Q&A. And so get those questions ready if you haven't had them yet. Build your network. All right, we're on the prepare side of things. Ask for advice. I don't know if I drilled into this too much, but when you're asking for that first meeting, you don't want to be asking for money, right? We kind of talked about that. One good thing you can do is, hey, your expertise, the reason I wanted to talk to you is you're really good at this. And here's what we're doing. And I'd like to get your take on it, right? So people love to help. It's a great way to get to know somebody as well. So ask for advice. Date when you're not raising capital. Build measurable momentum. Hypothesize some of your theories. Test them, right? This is heading towards that formula for success, right? You have to test some things and do the math. I think the formula for success is really important because you're doing the math for the investor. Because they're going to be figuring out, okay, if his churn is this and his customer acquisition cost is this, and they're making this much money, ROI is this time, but then what happens if we put this capital in and they're only generating Y return? They're going to be doing that stuff anyway. So if you do it for them, you have that formula for success. It makes it a lot easier. Keep everyone updated. And then on the execute side, prepare your tools, right? Research your targets. Be super organized, run a rigorous process, read up, be smart, get in the right mindset for what you're about to take on and do. Tell your story, right? Inject those important items into whatever your story is. One of the things that I do is I literally get a big sheet of paper and I'll just start writing a story arc, right? First, I can talk about this and then this and then this and then this and then this. And it's not like the meat and potatoes of the business. It's a compelling story. What's the most awesome way I can tell this story? Maybe I start with me because I had some personal thing happen that caused me to want to do this. Or maybe I fell into this because I worked in this industry for so long and I saw all these problems, right? Whatever that is, tell that story first and then find a way to inject those important pieces along the way and show me those important pieces. Don't tell me, right? Which is the next bullet here. Practice like crazy. Know it so that you're dreaming about it. Those talking points. Provide meaningful updates and raise money so you can get back to work, right? Get it done, get back to work. And that's it. So open for questions. Hopefully I can give you some decent enough answers, but feel free to fire away.
Does anybody have any questions in the chat or on Zoom? Feel free to say it out loud.
In terms of numbers and things like that, is there any rules or guidelines for some certain MRRs or things like that investors like to see? Or what do you talk about the team, and what are other components that they like to see other than the product, the financials, the team? And can you drill down a little bit deeper into financials and things like that?
Yeah, so you hit on a bunch of them. A lot more of them are in that Guy Kawasaki list, so feel free to look at that. There are also decks out there that people have shared, where they said, hey, this is how we raised our seed round, here's our deck. You find those on, what is it, SlideShare or something like that, I can't think of the name, but you'll find them out there, you'll find them in different places. But yes, like all the things you mentioned, team is super important. And a lot of these metrics depend on the stage that you're at as a company. Early stage, it's almost all about the team, right? They would love to know that you've tested some go-to-market strategies, you've got some formulas for how you can be successful, you've got customers, they want to pay you, or they are paying you. They'd love to see all this stuff, but for really early stage, that doesn't always apply. And so, you know, team is going to be really important, like we talked about earlier, where they're betting on you more than anything. And if they believe in you and what you're capable of, then, you know, they may make an early bet on you, which is higher risk, right? Because you haven't figured all the things out yet. And it depends on the type of investor as well. You know, there are some investors who really all they care about is the team. There's some investors that they really focus on revenue. So if you're not in revenue yet, it may be a good early conversation to get to know them, but odds are they're not the one that's going to be pulling the trigger early. All right, they're going to want to see more proof points, and maybe you don't have that revenue yet. So I would say, you know, all the things you mentioned are really important. I would say, you know, it depends very much on your stage and the investor that you're talking to as to what's important. But definitely look at those 10 items in Guy's list, and find others, because there are plenty other important things out there. And look, at some point, you are going to define what's important, right? You're going to have KPIs, key performance indicators, that if this number, whatever this number is, goes down, a certain part of your business is flat out going to fail, right? And so you begin to dictate, and this is a little bit later stage, but you've watched your business enough where you know that if this number goes down, we got trouble over here. And if this number goes down, we've got trouble over here. So, you know, aside from the typical financial metrics, you know, another thing that varies it too is SaaS metrics are very different than, say, B2C metrics, or sorry, B2C versus B2B metrics, you know, especially from a financial perspective and the things that they're looking at. Yeah, so hopefully that kind of covered a lot of your question there.
Yeah, thanks.
There you go.
I was going to ask about the due diligence process. Like, how do you guys do that? How deep do you go? Do you do it yourselves? You hire other people? And how far do you go with that? And what's the best way to be prepared for that?
Yeah, so diligence is an interesting process. It's different for every VC or angel investor, right? Angel investors are going to do arguably less diligence than a formalized, say, venture capital fund, because it's personal money, right? They're gonna be going a little bit more on gut. They're going to be earlier stage. They're going to be taking higher risk. In most cases, there are VC funds that do very early stage stuff, but generally speaking, they're going to do a little more diligence, right? And how they do it is going to vary wildly. The materials they want to see are pretty standard, though, right? So, you know, you're going to have that Dropbox or Google Drive or whatever, you know, DocSend sort of room where you put things like your financial model, right? Or you can use something like a forecaster to do that instead of building your spreadsheet. And there are a ton of spreadsheet templates out there for building a financial model. You know, and the point of the financial model is not to be right, because you're probably wrong, but what it helps the investor understand is how you think. Are you thinking about all the important things of a financial model? Are you thinking about
Like that picture up.
acquisition costs and how much, you know, marketing or whatever you need to do to get to XYZ? Are you thinking about the people you're going to need at certain stages of your business, et cetera, et cetera? And are you thinking about, you know, what is my capital actually going to be used for, and what is it going to turn into? You know, these are all things that you can put in documents, right? Your go-to-market strategy, your team, you know, a lot of that stuff will be in the deck. But if somebody wants to go deep in a certain area, you can build, you know, a much more extensive list of documents to support that. As far as I think how most do it, I'll talk about us a little bit, but generally speaking, if somebody's interested after that meeting, they'll say, hey, can you send me the deck if you haven't sent it yet? Can you send me any data room or whatever you might have there? And you'll do that and you'll provide it, and they'll start digging. Now they may pull in, they may do the diligence themselves, right? If they're an angel, they probably like the industry or have some knowledge of it. So they're probably going to do mostly their own. Like what we do is, my partner Neil and I, we have our own experience, but we're not frankly smart enough to evaluate every great company that comes along. So we leverage our extensive network to find the right people to dive in with us, right? So we may bring in some other folks to help us. Other VC firms do that as well in different ways. But that's kind of the process. And then, if we like what we see, that's great. We're going to have questions. There always are. So, the great part about it is you're going to learn the questions you need to answer through the process. Right. So you may see a couple of times out of the gate, somebody's asking this question. And what that triggers to you is, okay, have I seen this enough where I need to make a change? And if so, do I put it in the deck because I can do it lightweight and just answer that question and get it out so nobody asks it to me anymore? Or do I need to create some follow-on documentation to support it? And you're going to learn that along the way. And a lot of times what would happen is somebody asked me a question. I'd be like, you know what? In my head, I'm thinking I can build that in a day. I would just say, yep, I will get that to you this week, right? Or soon, or in a day or two, or whatever. Give yourself that window, go build it. And now it's a part of your diligence for everybody else that comes next.
Thanks.
All right, thank you. Does anybody else in the Zoom room have any questions?
Yeah, I have a question.
Okay.
If you just started out, what are your advice, or where do you go to start building out your network, or how you talk to somebody to to start building your network if you just started out, and you don't know anyone? Where do you have any advice on that?
Yeah, sure. I actually want to turn this on so I can see some faces here. So if I understood your question, I didn't hear the beginning part, but was it more along the lines of how do you build your network if you really don't have one? How do you start?
Yes.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, it's hard. The way I did it was going through Founder Institute. That's where I started, right? You guys are doing it through programs like this, right? You're going to meet folks that come in and do presentations or whatever, happens, and they're going to be willing to help, or they're going to be interested in what you're doing. So you get to know them, right? And then hopefully maybe they can introduce you to somebody. After they hear what you're doing, they're going to be pattern matching, right? In their head, they're going to be thinking, oh, I know somebody, or I met with somebody else who is kind of in your space or doing something tangential or can add value to this challenge that you have. And so you might get an introduction out of it. You might not, but that's why you take the meetings, right? I can't count how many times I thought to myself, and this is early, man, I don't see how this person's going to help. They're really not in our space at all. And I have the meeting, and it turns out to be one of the most influential conversations I have for my business, right? Because they know somebody that knows, our industry inside and out. That's, one of the ways I met a CEO of a company who ended up being a long-term partner for us, right? Didn't think much of the intro. Was kind of like not that excited to chat with this person. And next thing you know, it's one of the greatest meetings I ever had. So super important to do that. You can get to know people a little bit if you engage with them meaningfully on social, right? Whether it's LinkedIn or Twitter or wherever you hang out, and wherever the people you want to get in touch with hang out. That's one way to sort of break the ice a little bit, so that maybe if you do reach out to them on email, or in a DM or something, they've seen your name a few times interacting, like, oh yeah, I remember this person. I'm gonna go chat with them, see what they're up to, right? There's a lot of clever ways to do it. I think really though, it's about talking to people about what you're doing. And this was something I was really, really hesitant to do in my first company, the one that failed miserably. This isn't the only reason why, but I was very closed-lipped about what I was doing. I was afraid of talking about what it was that I was doing. And that is a horrible way to build a network. If you're not talking about what you're doing, you're not going to get that intro to that amazing person. You're not going to find the people who can materially change you as a person and your business and everything that you're doing. So
what if you're very,
stealing your
but what
ideas,
if you're
be afraid of giving away some secret, because the reality is like everybody's busy. We got our own things to do. We don't have time to do your thing, and we're probably not anywhere near as passionate about it as you are. So talk about it, get out there, meet people, go to events, meet everybody, just talk about what you're doing, because you just never know what a passing conversation might lead to. And it's a great way to just start your network on top of, you know, programs like this that are going to introduce you to people too.
Thank
Hopefully
you.
that was
Thank you. It looks like Kristen has a question.
Hi. Founder Institute, all the other accelerators that you've been a part of. I know the importance of pausing and having inflection points as you're talking, with your voice going up and down to kind of keep people engaged. From those programs, do you have any resource online, book that could help us with that? Because it comes naturally to some people and not to others.
Yeah, it's a really good question. And you're right. Like some people, they just want to get through it, right? And they just go, and they almost skip the periods, and they don't give people a moment to think about what they just said and consume it. And it's really important to do that. And so what I've learned is I don't have an actual resource for this, other than, you know, what's a group like a Toastmasters group or something like that. That might be a
This one
good
off. Okay.
and you know, really learn how to present, because that's kind of what that's all about. But you know, what I found is what I would do is I would set up a camera. I would have, you know, if I could project it or whatever, have my deck, I'd be clicking through it and I'd be talking, and I would give my pitch nonstop. Don't stop, just do the whole thing. Doesn't matter what distractions, or if you mess up, like fight through it, get through it, and then watch it. And the first few times it's going to be like, a lot of people don't like watching themselves talk. It's awkward. It's weird. Your voice is different. You see yourself in a way you're not used to seeing yourself. But like, you're going to watch that and go, oh man, I blasted through this part. Or boy, I was really talking fast. And then have other people look at it too. Now, other people doesn't always mean your best friends, because your best friends are going to tell you what you want to hear and not give you real feedback. So you got to be careful of that. But have people look at it and say, hey, can you just give me some honest feedback? Beat it up. Like, I'm ready for harsh feedback. Just tell them that up front, and hand out a 3-minute presentation on a video or something, and get feedback that way. But I think me watching myself repeatedly helped me think about the things that I'm doing as I'm doing them. Because a lot of times when you're pitching, like, everything goes out. It's like you're not paying attention to anything. You're stuck in your little head. Sometimes the blinders come out. But if you do that and you watch it later, then I think that's a great way to kind of get to know yourself as a presenter and improve that way. That's how it worked for me.
Do a lot of folks send in just the pitch deck with meeting notes, or do they mix it up and send it via video? What do you see?
You mean for like a first introduction to somebody? Yeah. So it's usually a deck, right? And it's going to be, some people say it needs to be this many slides. I think the reason people say that is because most people put too many words in their slides, and then it goes on forever and it's too long. I don't care how many slides it is, as long as it's just easy to consume. If I have to click every 3 seconds to follow your story, I don't care. But it should be, in most cases, people are going to want to control that click today, and they're going to want to, you know, click through on their own time with a deck of some kind. You can do a video. I think videos work better when you already built up some trust and they're willing to spend however many minutes it is to actually watch it. Because usually means if you're in a public place, you got to put in earphones, or you may not want to bother somebody who's in the room with you. So there's a little friction to video, even though it could be quicker, right? But I used to, after a while, I would do my investor updates, like people who have already invested. I would do an investor update by video. And this was years ago, and I got a lot of positive feedback from it. But those are people that are already, you know, very invested figuratively and literally in what we're doing.
All right, looks like we might have time for one more question. Yolanda, you had a question?
Oh, sorry, Crystal, I had to go back to my screen. You know, I kind of think I'm answering my question in my own head, but I'll ask it anyway. Thank you so much for the presentation. It was extremely informative. My question is in reference to, I have two questions. In reference to due diligence, there's a personal due diligence level also. Isn't it great to do your own LexisNexis on yourself? That's one question. I want your feedback regarding that. And then my second question is, if you have capital of your own and you have bank financing, how would that work with an angel and a VC in terms of doing a hybrid?
Hybrid meaning you're investing as well?
I'm investing, my bank is investing.
Okay.
Yes.
So first question, well, I'll answer the second one first. It's super common that founders put capital in. I think, the reality is depending on when you put your capital in versus when the other investors are coming in. If it's around the same time and the business is very similar stage as to when you invested, then you just invest on the same terms, right? So you have your founder shares, but you also have investor shares, right? And so it's certainly one way to do it. The reality is you have all the other shares anyway, so I'm not sure it makes sense to put you technically on the cap table in that way, but you might want to do that for some reason. But yeah, I mean, if you're going to do that, each investment round that you're going to do is going to have terms. It's going to be maybe debt, maybe a safe. Later is usually better for equity, although I did that backwards for better or worse.
Right. And when you refer to debt, when you refer to debt, you're referring to the bank.
Really, but it's not unheard of for people to put their own capital in, and it should be measured and valued in some way. It just depends on if you want to actually pull that off.
You have bank financing also.
Have some ideas on things that they've seen as well. So that
right.
I think something to chat with somebody about and get advice from legal counsel on that. They probably give you that for free if you're just talking to them and getting to know them and they're trying to win your business. The other question about kind of introspective concepts, I don't know if I guess I look at this as it's always good to be very introspective. I am a super introspective person. I'm always, for better or worse, analyzing myself against various things, whether it's metrics or other similar people or whatever it is. And so, I try mostly to measure myself against myself. But there's, I know some friends who have done like, what are they called? Like 360 reviews, where you have a bunch of people and somebody, moderates the process where they interview a bunch of your contacts and friends, and they ask the right questions so that person can present that to you in an unbiased way. This is where a lot of these people thought or think you can improve. This is where they think you're great. This is what they think you should do. So yeah, I mean, I think you use the word diligence on yourself, but I think you absolutely have to be self-aware. And I think it's a really good quality if you can be self-aware, because that means when things aren't going well, you're not going to have blinders on and just trudge forward. You're going to look around you and go, okay, what am I doing wrong? What are we doing wrong as a business? And how can we improve? And if you have those qualities, then I think you're in a much better position to be, coachable is a common word that's used. And so I think it's super valuable. If that's what you were asking, I hope it was.
Yes, thank you. Thank you.
Thank you so much,
Yeah,
for
of course.
presenting. We're unfortunately, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
We're unfortunately out of time. We have students that have to get to their next class. So this recording will be put onto the Rex YouTube channel. And so thank you everyone for coming.
Yeah,
and we'll see
Crystal.
you guys again next time. Thank you.
Thank
so much.
you.
Yeah, thanks for
Bye-bye.
having me.
Thank you very much.
Bye,
Very